What's up, guys? MC Stu here, and today we're going to do a quick update on the fiasco of Nerfs, or I think more accurately, customer relations with Cryptic that's been going on the last 2 weeks. We're going to do a quick recap on last week. We'll do a clip of this weekend stream to kind of go over that. We'll talk about the new patch notes for today that kind of continued down that same vein, and we also have a response from Kale, the community manager, regarding these issues. There's some positive things that came out of that, and there were some concerning things that were stated as well. So we'll talk about that. Let's go ahead and take a look at this week's, just a clip from the stream from this week to talk a little bit about what kind of started this this whole thing off. My issue and my rant, and I was pissed off, guys. I was not happy. I was gonna make a video right away on it when I saw this, and I ended up just going to work, doing my thing, and coming home and making it later. I don't know that really made a big difference, but it put me in a bad mood for like 2 days. And it wasn't so much that, you know, they've nerfed a console that, you know, may or may not been, you know, overpowered. I think in some instances, some of these consoles probably were, and that they probably did need a nerf. And it's not even how bad they nerfed them. So they did basically make both of these consoles pretty much useless. I mean, they capped them at a place that just, there's tons of better stuff to run. Rep stuff, mission drop stuff. There's much better options than these. My issue is the way that they handle these kinds of things, right? So especially like the weather control ship. This was an event ship. It was a free ship for everybody. Things get changed, balanced. I get it. Okay. This ship was added to the Mud store not too long ago for a lot of money. I mean, even on sale, it was like $100. And again, my issue isn't even that they nerfed something that was paid for with money, although I do have a problem with that, but I understand that it is what it is. This exists in all games, warships, and on and on and on. My problem is, and I don't know if it's just a cultural issue within the company or what, you know, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of empathy. There's no care. There's no, you know, hey guys, I'm really sorry, but you know, we needed to make an adjustment. Forget about the fact that it was done in, you know, not a good way. There was much better ways, I think, to nerf this. I think they went the easy route. But even greater than that, there's no communication about this stuff, right? These problems that they had identified with these consoles, they didn't identify these on Monday and decide to fix them, you know, on Tuesday, Wednesday, right? This stuff's been in the works for a long time, and I'm assuming with the weather control ship, that ship's been out for, you know, 2 years plus. So I'm assuming they've known this stuff for a long time, and, you know, even prior to working on this, why is there no known issues, you know, stated about these things where, you know, this console or, you know, the Agony console is not performing as intended, you know, we're currently working on it, so that, you know, if you go in and you buy, you know, on sale $100 ship, which, and a lot of people buy this ship, the trait's pretty good, but the console is excellent for a science build. And I personally know people that bought it for that, and they basically threw away $100 because it's useless now. There was no information, nothing, no heads up given prior to, you know, making these kinds of changes so that people, you know, could make a, you know, reasonable decision about how they wanted to spend their money. And the same thing is true to a certain extent with the Agony console. It is a newer, you know, ship and those kinds of things. But again, there's nothing at all said about it. And I've gotten feedback, well, you know, anyone that plays the game, you know, should know that these are coming and this and that. And that might be true, you know, in reality, but that's not, I can't run my business that way. I don't think it's right. And I think at a minimum, you know, the communication on this stuff has to be better, or I'm not going to spend any money in the game anymore. Because I don't know if I buy something, if out of nowhere it's going to be completely, you know, destroyed. And again, I understand balancing, and they didn't balance these. They made them basically to where you should just delete them. I mean, don't delete them, because I'm hoping that they'll fix them at some point. But that's what they did to these. These aren't even balanced. They basically took the money that that you paid for these and burned it for you, you know. And it extra hurts for me because, like 2 days before this, I had used one of my coupons from the event campaign on my free-to-play to pick up the Adamant specifically for this console. And yes, that is a good ship, and I will probably use it at some point, but had there been some information given about this coming down the pipeline, I wouldn't have got it. I would have gotten something else and maybe said, okay, I'll wait till they make some adjustments to it and look and see how it is and get it on next year's, on my free to play, that is. So that's really my issue with this. And I think, again, on the podcast tonight, we'll talk more in detail about this. But my issue is really the communication, side of this stuff. And I just, I don't think it's right. I asked my wife, I said, hey, if she's a big Fortnite player, if you bought some like super popular skin in Fortnite and, 3 months later, they changed the way it looked for whatever reason, how would you feel about that? And she said, well, they have done that. And they offered to give me all my money back, every single person. If you had bought this skin, you could get a complete refund if you want to. And they just did that. That was a part of the release because they understand that, that's going to make people unhappy. And, and sometimes things just happen that make people unhappy, but these people paid money. We're your customer. We're your client. There was a comment on one of the streams where I think it was Kale. He had just kind of casually just mentioned, it's really rubbed me the wrong way, that, what's that console everyone's complaining about that got nerfed, and he couldn't think of it, and then he thought of it and went on to talk. But I think that was a good example of the attitude. I'm not just complaining about it. I'm your client that spent hard-earned money for products from you, and you guys not only nerfed it in the ground, which again is less of my issue, but it's just done in this such cavalier way that it just really rubs me the wrong way, guys. But we'll leave that there because I don't want to get irritated again. And again, I'm not trying to poop on anybody in particular, but the company and the way that they run this stuff, it's almost like there's this disconnect from their players. Their players aren't people that are just coming in and trying to mooch off them. We're paying customers, and I don't feel like, we're being treated that way all the time. All right, I'll leave that there, guys, because I don't want to keep on going. But if you haven't watched the video, check it out. I'm interested to get more. I really enjoy your guys' feedback. I'm going to be running a lot more polls about different things as well. And the polls give, a limited kind of amount of options. You can only pick one, but I really enjoy reading your guys' comments on those too. Because there's, the stuff I haven't thought about, and it's helpful in forming the way that not just I put together content, but I'm hoping at some point, maybe, Cryptic will look at some of this, information we're being able to pull together and get a better idea of what are the players asking for, right? And and what could they then make happen, that would either solve problems or make the game better, that aligns with, their goals and what the players are asking for. If you don't give the players what they're asking for, you're not going to keep long-term players, and that's the problem. So, yep, we all do know that they nerf stuff. Yep, and like I said, I addressed that as well. And I think you agree. You said in your video they didn't nerf those things; they burned them, right? So it was a bad job at the nerf. And again, I think the community, or the communication stuff on that, people like myself and a lot of you guys, Augie, we're reading the blogs, we're testing stuff. We, should have a good idea when things are coming like this. The majority of the game base doesn't. They watch our videos and they say, oh, Agony Redistributor, that's a great console, I'm going to grab that. And then they find out that they just wasted their money, or that their build's not working now, and they had no idea because there was no communication. So, just kind of finish off on that. The issue is not that they nerf stuff. Every single game they have to balance and do those kinds of things. It's the way that they go about doing that. In warships, like we know in like months in advance if balancing things are even being looked at on a ship. And then we know in advance what they're going to do to it. Then it goes into like live testing, so you can try it and there might be some extra little adjustment. And then on top of that, if you had bought that ship previously and you're just unhappy for whatever reason, they exchange it for another ship or give you your doubloons back /EC. That is what I'm upset about, and that's the problem that I have. And I understand that is the way it's been, and probably will continue to be. And so we do have to just accept that, I think, if we're going to play the game. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be quiet about it, So, and I don't think you guys should be either. But I do think that everyone needs to be respectful about it and those kinds of things. I mean, it's not personal, right? These guys aren't saying "I'll screw them" or anything like that. And we need to make sure that we're not doing. So that's basically, in a nutshell, my kind of rant there, discussion live about the problems we were having. It wasn't so much the nerfs, but it's the way going about it. We understand things have to be balanced, but you're selling items, you're saying nothing about it until the changes happen. And that lack of communication, I think, is unethical if you're selling things for money. So this morning, Tuesday the 20th, there was patch notes that went out, or actually it was last night, and the patch went live today. They were removing the Infiltrator Bridge Officer trait stacking ability. So I won't go into major detail on this. This is for some niche higher end builds. But basically you could use different variations of this trait and they would stack. So if you had Superior Infiltrator and you had 5 of them, you'd only get 1. But if you had a Basic and a Superior, you would get the stat from both. So there's 3 versions. So basically you could get the minimum, the mid, and that max version all added up. And that was something that people would use in conjunction with traits that have been put out after the fact that took advantage of that. So there was items that have been sold, some of the legendary ships and things like that that were sold had traits and things that worked in conjunction with this. These were added to the game about 10 plus years ago, and it was stated that they were getting rid of that. And so Kale addressed this on the stream, 10 forward stream this evening, and we'll look at that here in just a moment. But it was another one of those things. Then this didn't cost money, but it had been in the game so long, people had spent hours of time earning EC and things, huge amounts in order to get these bridge officers, which are really expensive. And while it's not money to them, the amount of time involved in getting these, even at a minimum wage job would have been a lot of money. But it goes to that greater question, why are these things happening? Are people asking for it? Why isn't there communication prior? I mean, those are really the kind of things for me. These individual things are less important than the communication. And, my question, one of my biggest questions is, how do you make decisions internally about what the customers want? You run a business, generally businesses give customers what they want within reason, right? But none of that seems to be happening. There was a big stink over all of this stuff, and it looks like that they're going to address some of it. So that's very encouraging. But I've never once gotten an email with a questionnaire or saw them use polls or anything to get, player feedback to figure out, what do us as customers, as players, want? What do we, not want? And I understand people want things that are OP and don't make sense, right? And you're not going to get that. I understand, not on purpose anyways. But in a general sense, that back and forth between your community, like you see with other games where they're delivering things that people want, or they make changes, they get feedback, and then they make adjustments, and there's a process to that. And I think really that's the word, right? Is that there doesn't seem to be a process for that connection between the players and the business, or the customers and the business is really a better way to put it, because that's what we are. We're not players. You don't treat us like we're other players that you're playing with on the game. We're your customer. So let's take a look at what Kale said. Again, some of it's encouraging, and I'm glad that they addressed it. So that's good. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see that up front would be nice. So let's take a look at what Kale had to say.
Let's start with the question that everybody is going to ask. I addressed this on Twitter already, but just to jump in here, there's been a lot of hullabaloo about some nerfs that have happened to different things lately. Some of those were intentional nerfs, some of those were not. The stacking infiltrator issue. Basically what happened is that was a very old bug. It was never meant to stack. And that old bug got brought back up when we were testing stuff for the bridge officer upgrades. So Jonathan said, "Oh, old bug, I'll fix it," and fixed it. It just didn't really occur to anybody, myself included, how much it would nerf that particular ability. So we talked about it, and that's probably going to get undone. I don't have full confirmation that it's getting undone yet, but it seems like it'll go back to stacking. Agony Redistributor got hit with a very large nerf bat because it was ridiculously powerful, and I think everybody knows that. It was just super overdone. Was the nerf bat that it got hit with too big? Is the question that's being asked internally right now, and the designers are going to look at the data. They have looked at the data as you guys play and see what comes in with its performance. The other two, which was the Eddie's thing, and there was another one that Tholian Web. The designers seem pretty satisfied with how those nerfs are performing, and how those things are performing in their lane right now. One thing that Jeremy always mentions on this stream that I think is a good thing to think about when we're talking about this stuff, is how uh, the reason they strive for balance is so that people feel like they have a choice when they're playing the game. If there is one thing that is so good that you feel like you can't build a ship without putting it on there, then that's not great game design. So that's kind of the philosophy that changes like these come from, whether it's nerfing stuff or buffing stuff. We are everything's a process and going back and forth on different things. So be patient with us. The other half of that equation, of course, that many of you have brought up is that some people went out and spent actual money on these things because they were so powerful in the first place. And we do have to figure out the balance there. We have to figure out we want you people to feel like they got their money's worth on the stuff they bought, but we also don't want there to be one item in the game that's just so much far and away powerful than anything else. So it's an ongoing conversation. We were talking about it in Leeds meeting this morning. I talked to Jonathan and Jeremy from our systems team about it this afternoon, and it's it's an ongoing discussion. I don't know that we're going to have perfect answers for you right here tonight. Definitely not tonight. But that's where things stand with that right now.
Okay, so it looks like that was kind of an unintended thing with the infiltrator. So they're going to reverse that. That was just thought to be a bug. Hey, let's just fix it. It's been in there forever. It's easy. And they didn't think through that this would have ripple effects, which at this point in this game, especially anything that's more than a couple of years old, will have ripple effects. The layers of this game, the age of it, it's massive, right? So they made this change. It doesn't look like there was any kind of testing. They just missed it. I understand that stuff's just going to happen. Granted, it happens a little more than often, but again, okay. So they're going to fix it. They heard us. They made that right. I appreciate that, and that's very encouraging. I don't even use these bridge officers, by the way. So I mean, I don't have any personal, investment in this. It's just another, example of that lack and break in communication between, their customers. But he did say something that was somewhat concerning to me. Let's take a look at this and then let's talk about it a little bit more.
The thing that I have control over that sucked about this is that none of these changes were talked about until they were in the patch notes, and I didn't know about them until they were in the patch notes. There's no reason why a system designer should come up to me every time they consider making a change and say, hey, you should know about this. They have jobs to do and I have jobs to do, but I do want to get a heads up when something like that is going to happen. And so I'm working on adding my own systems for me. I've gotten a producer to give me access to this thing called the Builds Manager. Anyway, it gives me early access to what changes designers are making so I can see what people are doing.
So it's problematic that there's a feeling internally that changes should not be relayed to Kale. Now I understand every single change that's being thought of or whatever, that should not. But anything that hits the queue of things that are being looked at and are going to be worked on for changes do need to be communicated to Kale, and those then need to be communicated to us so that we can make proper decisions when we go to spend money and purchase items in the game. If it's something that is just discussed or whatever, we don't need all of that. But at some point, this stuff hits a queue that they're going to work on X, right? Once that happens, we need a known issue or something that says, hey guys, we are working on this. We might not know what it's going to look like yet, but there is going to be changes to it. So I know that if I go and purchase a ship or a console or whatever it may be, that maybe I want to wait and see what they're going to do before I go ahead and make that decision. Now, Kale is taking initiative to, get more access to systems so that he can try and head these things off in the future. I appreciate that. I think that's excellent. But this is something that he's just having to do himself. There's no process. There's no procedure for that to automatically just be a part of the flow. And that's the issue. That's why we're here. Now, granted, or not granted, but, he's identified that. And so that's good. hopefully there's a procedure made out of that and it goes farther than just Kale, trying to head off these things by himself. And again, I appreciate that. I appreciate that effort, but I hope it goes farther than that to where that becomes a procedure, a process. Once things hit the queue to be looked at, that the community is notified through Kale, through the blog post, that is going to happen. So in, just to recap, there was these heavy-handed nerfs. There was some lack of communication. The community was not happy, spoke out. I saw most people being very respectful. I didn't look and get on Reddit. I don't generally use that, so I don't know if that was something that didn't occur there. Generally, it doesn't. But for the most part, it seems like people were respectful. They were upset, and that's okay. And it sounds to me from what I've heard tonight that they heard us and that they are looking at these things again. So I think that's a positive thing. I appreciate that they're doing that. I'd like to see them go farther and implement processes and procedures so that these things don't ever need to happen. And I don't mean the nerfs. I mean the communication side of it. Things are always going to need to be balanced. I understand that. We can have a whole separate argument about how they balanced it, which I'm not super happy about. But, that's neither here nor there. If I don't know that's happening, then I can't make proper buying decisions. And I wasted half of my year events on picking up a ship that 2 days later, the reason I bought it for the console is completely useless. And I've wasted all of that time. Other people paid money for these things for those specific reasons. And so we need to know about that stuff as soon as it hits a point where it's actually being worked on the back end. Again, we don't need all the details. I understand that, but we need to be notified that, hey, this is on the known issue report now. And so we're most likely going to see changes coming down the pipeline. So again, thank you to Kale for speaking up and relaying this information to us. I think he did it in a good way. There was empathy that showed some care, and I'm glad to see that from these guys that they're taking it seriously. So thank you to Cryptic for doing that, and hopefully you guys can make some adjustments to the internal processes so we don't ever end up here again. I mean, they're playing cleanup now, and there's a way to head this stuff up prior to nerfs happening. And again, nerfs will happen. They will continue to happen. They happen in every single game. They're going to happen. There's just a good and there's a bad way to handle it. And so I'd like to see it be handled good going forward. All right, guys, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about what Cryptic has said. Are you confident that they're going to make some positive changes? I mean, really, at this point, what they're looking at is doing a better job at the nerfs, which is good. I think, and not to keep beating a dead horse, my issue wasn't so much that the nerfs, they did a bad job at them, which I do believe that on some of them. My issue was that communication side of it, selling us product that was in the pipeline to be changed, being my issue. So let me know what you guys think. If you made it all the way to the end here, I appreciate you watching. I just wanted to kind of recap everything because this has been in, the STO news pretty heavily the last week. They did respond, and I wanted to make sure anyone that was just coming into this or catching bits of it had the whole story, and make sure I'm being as fair as possible to Cryptic, that they did address it, at least in a communication standpoint, in talking with us and saying, hey, we hear you, and we're gonna look at this stuff again. So, all right, guys, till next time, thank you very much for watching. Have a good one. Hey guys, appreciate you watching. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, ring the bell, and sub to the channel for the latest news updates and how-to guides.